And there will be signs in sun and moon and stars, and upon the earth dismay among nations, and perplexity at the roaring of the sea and the waves.
Hurricane Sandy tracked toward the east coast of the U.S. today after leaving at least 40 people dead across the Caribbean. It battered the Bahamas as a Category 1 storm today, knocking down trees and power lines as it went. And Sandy is already stirring up strong winds and pounding surf along the Florida coastline. Where exactly the storm lands in the U.S. next week is still a question, but preparations for heavy rains and high winds were underway from the mid-Atlantic to New England. Forecasters say the hurricane could spawn a superstorm after colliding with a cold front from the north and a winter storm in the west.
Some 150,000 people were in shelters in southern India today after a tropical storm slammed ashore. At least 6 people were killed there and in neighboring Sri Lanka. The storm brought heavy winds and rain, flooding streets and subway tunnels in the Indian city of Hyderabad. It also grounded an oil tanker with 37 crew on board. Most were rescued, but 5 remained missing. In Syria, rebels killed 28 government soldiers in a series of attacks in the northern part of the country. Anti-regime activists said gun battles erupted at 3 military checkpoints surrounding the city of Sarageb in Idlib province. The checkpoints line major supply routes to Aleppo, the country's largest city and a major battleground.
Most active volcano in Hawaii right now is Kilauea, and today the U.S. Geological Survey gave us an incredible look inside. Its geologists got close enough to shoot this video of a lake of lava. Now, this is a lake that burns at nearly 2,000 degrees, and it's flowing at the highest levels ever recorded.
Come out of her, my people, that you may not participate in her sins, and that you may not receive of her plagues.
This was another difficult day in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy. The U.S. death toll rose to at least 102, and for millions of people, basic needs became increasingly urgent. A familiar sound returned to lower Manhattan streets last night. The power did not. Police helped direct traffic with signals still dark.
It's really unsettling because we don't have any power. We don't know what's going on. We don't have anywhere to get to televisions.
Many people flocked to mobile charging stations across the city, plugging in cell phones and other devices. The subway system remains closed as crews work to clear stations that are still flooded, a task New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said is being prioritized.
Getting the water out of the tunnels is probably one of the main orders of business right now. These are significant challenges that we're facing. In many cases that we've never experienced before or not in a generation.
This photo shows the destruction in the neighborhood of Breezy Point, Queens. Now, screen right is what it used to look like. Screen left shows the more than 100 homes burnt to the ground.
We never went through anything like this. We may have had a storm where it blew a couple of things back and forth, but for us to be flooded out our homes, animals all over the place, the shovels.
I'm 69 years old, and it's the worst that I've ever seen it in my life.
A hurricane in the final days of October, fed by warm ocean water, slams the eastern seaboard. It's a reminder of how often extreme weather events have been in the news. Superstorm Sandy battered the coastline, and a record 14-foot storm surge brought New York City to a standstill, leaving the city with potentially staggering repair costs. All this came just months after the summer heat wave caused harsh droughts throughout the Midwest, and wildfires engulfed entire swaths of Colorado. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the last year, from June of 2011 to July of 2012, was the nation's warmest year since record-keeping began in 1895. And it's just over a year ago that Hurricane Irene caused record flooding in the Northeast.
So many of you, as we said, have been asking us, is it contaminated? And ABC's chief medical editor, Dr. Richard Besser, went out to get a sample to test it, and he's here now with the results. So what happened, Rich?
Well, you know, I wanted to show you why you have to be so incredibly careful, whether the water's in your house or it's on the street. So I headed down to Lower Manhattan, where there's still a lot of area that's underwater, and I collected a sample. You know, I wore gloves and I wore boots to make sure that none of this water would come in contact with my skin, because it can be very, very damaging. I took it to the Ambient Group Lab, which is a laboratory which specializes in water testing. Now, the water looked totally clear, but it just about knocked me over from the smell. It was loaded with petroleum, with gasoline, very strong, and that can be very dangerous if you come in contact with it. We then put it through testing. Now, if it has bacteria, sewage in it, it glows purple, just like that. And our water is being tested, and we'll have that result tomorrow. But you know, this is water that is very dangerous. It's contaminated with bacteria and with all kinds of chemicals.
And you have been saying to me all day long, if it gets on anything in your house, first of all, wear gloves, but even a closed package, a can, do not use it.
This is the question people have. Any food, any canned goods, anything that came in contact with flood water, it's best to just get rid of it. Any other things, pots, plates, those kinds of things, have to be scrubbed with water, soaked in bleach before you use those. This can be very dangerous, and you can prevent illness if you follow this strict rule.
People out there, why in the world don't you have a month's supply of food, water, and firearms?
How blessed is he who keeps waiting and attains to 1,335 days. That calculates to 3.65 years. One needs to be able to survive until Messiah returns, so be discreet to make sure provisions last at least beyond that number. For it is written, be on guard that your hearts may not be weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and worries of life, and that day come on you suddenly like a trap. For it will come upon all those who dwell on the face of all the earth. But keep on the alert at all times, praying in order that you may have strength to escape all these things that are about to take place, and to stand before the Son of Man. For those of you who live in Mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots, New York City, you have been graciously given an opportunity to realize the extent of how worse things can be. Transportation breakdowns, you have a loss of power, you have gasoline shortages, communication breakdowns, hospitals having to be evacuated, and now the starting of the plagues. If one would consider the number of rodents, animals, feces, and various types of chemicals combined within the medium of water, perception of the type of diseases and sicknesses should be easily attainable, whether they are familiar diseases or unfamiliar type of diseases. A link will be provided in the description section of this video to help one become familiar of the waterborne type of diseases. Be on alert.
Why is it so bad to be prepared? Why am I a bad guy for selling, and this is a plug here because I think you should get prepared, strategic relocation? Just even if you live in a big city, it has the escape routes, safest areas in that city to live. If you live in New York, New Jersey, wherever, LA, San Francisco. I mean, I got this book back when it was the first edition because I wanted to be prepared. I moved to the Texas Hill Country outside Austin. Strategic relocation just means living in the safest area. The economic zones, the safest countries in the world if you're wanting to flee the country. The Secure Home by Joel Skousen. All the information goes into this film that we're going to put out next week at prisonplanet.tv for everybody. The new film, Strategic Relocation, the DVD.
Come out of her, my people, that you may not participate in her sins, and that you may not receive of her plagues.